The second article so far in the Guardian investigative series, The Cost of the Crown, focuses in on the duchies. This article focuses in on the duchies of Cornwall and Lancaster. Here I shall pause for the three people that are going to make fun of my pronunciation of Lancaster, despite the fact that I looked it up and listened to it multiple times. Can we just normalize pronunciations differing state to state, country to country? Anyway, according to The Guardian, King Charles and the late Queen Elizabeth II have received payments equivalent to more than £1 billion from the two land and property estates that are at the center of a, quote, centuries-old debate over whether their profits should be given to the public instead. To give you an idea of size and scope and location of the two duchies, here is a handy-dandy map. Let's discuss the origins of these two duchies. The origins of the Duchy of Lancaster date back to 1265, when Henry III seized land after a failed revolt by feudal lords who wanted to limit the powers of the king and gain some representation. The horror. The king gave the land, a majority of it to the north, to his son Edmund. Then there's the Duchy of Cornwall, which was created in 1337 by King Edward III to provide an income for his son from land in southern England. The debate over where the revenue should go has been going on for literal centuries. So monarchists say, quote, royal charters provide the legal justification for the sovereign and heir to claim that revenues from the duchies belong to them and should be treated as private income. In more recent decades, scrutiny has come from Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, specifically in 2005. They called on the government to examine whether the Queen and Charles were receiving too much money from the duchies. And they conclude, quote, the current arrangements stem from the 14th century and the resulting income is that extent an accident of history. But surprise, this review request was apparently ignored by the Treasury. And then, listen to this, quote, in 2011, when the conservative-led government changed the mechanism for public funding of the monarchy, that was the sovereign grant, they reasserted the idea that duchy income belongs to the royals. Again and again, the conservatives in government tend to side with the monarchy, support the monarchy, occasionally go and work for the monarchy. So here's another kicker. Quote, the monarch and heir are not permitted to sell off capital assets for personal gain. Ensuing both duchies can be passed on to future royals intact. The duchies are required under a 19th century law to send their annual accounts to Parliament, but they are exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. So again, the secrecy here is the problem. This article is chock full of incredible graphs, incredible digital images. Let me show you some. It also really highlights the income disparity. So this is showing the duchies and UK average income growth. Over 7 decades, the combined income the royals received from the two duchies grew 16-fold in real terms. By comparison, average earnings in the country slightly more than quadrupled over the same period. So this is a cumulative look. The average worker in Britain would have earned the equivalent of £1.4 million over the same period. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles received more than £6 million each from their duchies. And remember, they're also getting money through a sovereign grant. This is a ton of wealth we're talking about. The Guardian compares the duchies to operating like professionally run real estate empires. They manage farmland, hotels, medieval castles, office buildings, and they've also started getting into more urban development. But the biggest difference is their exemption from corporate tax and capital gains tax. This is a result of, quote, a long-standing but ill-defined doctrine that exempts royal bodies from complying with swaths of British laws. In basic terms, this provides the duchy with considerable commercial advantages. This article also goes into how the Queen was less interested in running her duchy, Charles quite a bit more. This article cites an occasion where Charles secretly lobbied John Major's government to alter the Lease Reform Act so that residents of the Somerset village, Newton St. Lo, would be prevented from buying their own properties from their royal landlord. Ministers backed down to, quote, avoid a major row with the prince. And in a very confusing state of affairs, Charles lived rent-free for 13 years at Highgrove, which is estimated to be worth as much as £15 million. Quote, that changed in 1993 when he became his own tenant and in a circular arrangement began to pay rent to the Duchy of Cornwall while receiving income from the Duchy of Cornwall. The late Queen and her son amassed incredible wealth from their duchies. It's even alleged that the Queen used some of the money from the Duchy of Lancaster to pay for Prince Andrew's settlement in his sexual assault case. And should they be privy to this income? Or does it belong to the public? Or, if it continues going to the Crown, does the public have a right to know how much and how it is spent? Does that raise questions about if the British government should continue funding the Crown? I think those are all really good questions, and I don't have an opinion either way. I'm not a citizen. This is not my fight, but I find it incredibly interesting. And I think if more transparency comes out of this series, the better.